So, in the same sense of within a wrestling match, you need to let things breathe. When it comes to long-term storytelling, you can't have something huge happen every single week or every other week or every show. You have to plant seeds. One show, I'll go to raise Oday's hand and he snatches it away. And that's the extent of the split, I guess, is just that. Or other small details where I look disappointed for one show. It's that way, an accumulation of emotions throughout multiple months, and in this case, years, to where you have time to process these emotions and not only process them, but anticipate with excitement or anxiety what's going to happen next.
We are back with another episode of the Project Get to Know podcast. My name is Emmanuel, and we have Shawn Hendrix here on the program. I will say a factoid about how your name came to be, because you're the second Hendrix throughout this entire podcast that has the last name is Hendrix. Houston was the very first one. So this was, hopefully someone will catch on that is a different person, but thank you so much for having you on the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. Who's Houston Hendrix? My little brother from completely different parents. So
that's like a surprise. You're like, yeah, we're gonna have to figure out who's who. But New Texas is your new home. But before we even delve into having your new home in New Texas, you've had a very long career in reality of wrestling. And I always ask this whenever someone's at Row, meeting Booker for the first time and knowing that this will be your path as a wrestler. What was that like, just seeing Booker being one of the trainers over at Reality?
Oh, well, I had a kind of a unique experience in that I made a stupid decision to get my tongue pierced day before. So when I had already been training for like a couple of days, and I met him on like my fourth or fifth day there, but I had recently pierced my tongue, and he's like, "Hey, what up, kid? What's your name?" Oh,
Oh no!
He's like, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah." I showed him my, like, "Okay, all right," and walked off. But that was my first experience with Book. But it's such a weird feeling whenever there's somebody that you used to watch as a kid and he's just talking to you like you're a person, and that's I still haven't gotten used to it. I've met many people after Book, like many names as they say, and I still just sit back and be like, this is unusual for me because I watched you whenever I was smaller. I can't get over it still.
It's interesting because what's the difference meeting Booker as a fan and meeting Booker as a trainee?
It's a lot less intimidating.
Okay.
It's a lot less intimidating meeting him as a fan. Oh, so I first met him. I went to one of his shows. This was way before it was Reality of Wrestling. It was PWA, I believe, running out of Pasadena. And my best friend from high school, his cousin, was wrestling. He was Mr. Fitness, was his wrestling name. And so I went to the show, and then he came out, and it blew my mind that I was in Pasadena in a crowd of, honestly, not very many people. And there was Booker. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" "No, what's up, kid?" And that was cool. It was just kind of starstruck there for a second. But then him as a trainer, it's like, it's very intimidating because here's somebody who's done it all over the world, and now he's going to look at me and be like, "Is this right? Is this wrong?" It's usually wrong. So it's intimidating, in my opinion.
But how did that intimidation turn into advice? And, of course, in every wrestling school, whether it's here at Row or anywhere else in the state of Texas, when that intimidation became advice, what was that like seeing Booker as the teacher at that point?
So, the way that Booker gave advice, if I'm going to be completely transparent, for a long time, it was hard for me to understand. He kind of, and I say this with no disrespect, he kind of rants for a long time.
Okay.
And like there's a message in there somewhere. And for the most part in my early career, it was trying to decipher like what does he mean by this? Like I don't know if I quite get it. And then there's just one day where it just clicks and you're like, "Oh, I totally understand what he's saying." Like
Oh, okay.
there I get it. I understand what he's saying. The message is incredibly clear. And it's a weird night and day difference if you go back and listen to and try to replay some of the rants that he would go on and be like, I didn't understand it first, but now I see how he was getting to the point. If that makes sense.
Did repetition kind of play into that too? Because was it something that's kind of, I wouldn't say hammered, but rather it's been done repetitively? Did that really factor into that eureka moment training at Row?
Probably that I didn't think of it that way, and it probably does make more sense that just like with everything, with repetition becomes familiarity, and you understand it. It's probably exactly what it was.
For it to be reiterated over and over and over, like you get to see the dots connect, but the first time that you're doing it, you're basically like, what do you mean? But having that repetition shows that, oh, okay, I must have been missing something that connected the dots on a lesson that you're trying to do at training.
Yeah, early on, it was kind of like I didn't know what I didn't know. And so as I got more into it and learned a little bit more, I understood that there were concepts. I understood concepts, but I knew that I didn't know them. So that was the next step of I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I didn't know what I need to know. And then there were things that I was beginning to understand, of things that I knew I needed to know, and and then just now I understand. And even today, I'm almost however many years into it I am, and there's still things that I'm figuring out, which it never ends.
It's fascinating. Do you remember your debut though? Do you remember?
Oh, I remember my debut. Um,
Okay.
it was 2013. That was my first match in June of 2013 against Kevin Bernhardt, in one of his last matches.
What? He was
Yeah.
okay. All right. What was that like?
So his character at the time was there's no appropriate way to say this in 2025.
Okay. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Uh, he was he went by Kelly and wore a
Okay.
bunch of pink. He would kiss people and sit on their face. That kind of character.
Effeminate. Let's say effeminate.
He was
That's a better
effeminate.
way of.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's very. Thank you. Um, the match was about 3.5 minutes long because I didn't know how to slow down, and I didn't know. Like once I went through the curtain, it was just like this is actually happening now. Like
Ah, okay.
this is crazy. I had my family in the front row. There was only maybe two rows filled out at the time. We weren't doing too hot just yet, but it went by in a flash. I mean, it was only 3.5 minutes, so it went by pretty quickly, even if you were judging it by a standard perception of time. But it went by like that.
You just didn't know where the moment was, and you're like, "Oh, the bell's ringing!" Like, it's like, what is
Yeah,
happening?
like
Because like with the debut, and we're gonna go back to that prior question and having the feedback from whether it's Book or whoever the coaches were at the time. How did that really solidify you as a wrestler with each match that you're going through in your time in Raw?
So the main people who would give me feedback, it would be Eric and Andrew Lockhart of the Brothers Lockhart, Rob Barnes and Ryan Davidson.
Okay.
Um, they were the main ones telling me what I needed to work on, what I needed to maybe throw away because it didn't work or didn't make sense. And at that time, this was 12 years ago now, they were not saying that they're different now, but they were super encouraging. Our trainee class was a lot smaller.
Hmm.
Um, like I would say that in that time frame, I was the only person who was debuting.
Okay.
Um, and so there was a lot of hands-on with putting that first match together from book. There was a lot of hands-on from all of the trainers that I just mentioned. Of like, I mean, I had a lot of basically one-on-one sessions with Eric and Andrew Lockhart for every training session every day. We would go in there and I'd be there for 6 hours and it'd be just them showing me how to do things. Um, I went in at a very good time for somebody who was new. Row wasn't huge yet. Um, and so I was the only trainee for a long time.
What was like the constant feedback that you got where when the coaches are like, okay, let's do this, let's not do this, or okay, we can move it up to another level? What was that type of advice that you got from the coaches when you're starting to really getting to know how a match is structured? So all the way winning a match or some other outcome that the match is going through.
So the main thing that I was told pretty consistently early on was you got to slow down. Um, you have to let things, if you hit a move or if you hit a moment, let the crowd register that it happened and let them have their feelings for it instead of just rushing right to the next thing. Which is why, like I said, my debut match was 3.5 minutes long. They
The
could have
speed
played
run.
it really was. Um, it just, if I had slowed down in between everything that happened, if I had gone to the crowd possibly after I hit this elbow drop and I don't know, played into them a little bit or played into a character. It's hard to have a character in your first match, but if I had played into any kind of existing character, could have easily stretched that 3.5 minute match with with
Right.
with no problem into 5 minutes. Um, and just done the same exact moves and told the same story. Just stretched it a little bit to 5 minutes.
And that would have been like okay, it would have been a bit longer, but because I was curious, especially within that time, and crowd interactions are a thing, and knowing that you are telling the story and knowing how to really make a match memorable, how much of that has really carried over into how you're doing things now, um having that foundation over a row.
Man, I am still hoping every single time I step through the curtain that people are going to remember this match. That it's more so the moves or the sequences that you do. I think what helped from Row was that we had really good production at a time in which not everybody had access to production.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody can pull out their iPhone and it's decent quality and they can get nice shots. But then it was not uncommon to go to a place and wrestle and there'd be no footage. It still
Mm-hmm.
happens today, but it's a lot less common than it used to be. Um, so I had the advantage of knowing how to work my facial expressions or body language to convey an emotion to not only a live crowd but also to a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because wrestling is a lot like theater, to which you have to perform very big so everybody can see you, and your emotions have to be gigantic so that people in the back can see it. But it also
Mm.
is television, to where when you have those moments, to where acting is it's a little more subtle. It's It's a small smile. It's a quick little. It's a lot more subtle. So it's a combination of theater acting and television acting, and I think that um, got some good reps from reality wrestling being able to do that.
Because I've had Izzy before, and getting the road tag titles at that time, and Izzy has been in the game as long as you have, to work with him in getting that title. And I always say this with tag teams. How much of your contributions and what Izzy's doing leading you to getting the tag titles during your time in training?
So, in 2018, I ended a story with somebody named Clay Roberts, and I believed myself to possibly be retired. I was gone for about a year and a half. But something that piqued my interest, I would go onto Reality Wrestling YouTube page and check in every once in a while, especially with what they were doing with Legion. And there was one episode that I saw. I was like, oh, somebody debuted. I was like, wait a minute. Is that Unholy Gregory James? I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Gregory
Like,
James. Wow. That's a
wow,
name.
yeah, like that's awesome. He was a guy from Austin that I'd really liked his stuff, and I was like, you know what? I want to work with that guy. So like he was a big factor without him even knowing this. I only recently told him this. He was a big factor to me just going back into the business. Um, he had his little, not to sound condescending, but he had his dark gimmick in Austin, Unholy. Couldn't use the word unholy at Raw. Um, and I thought, you know what would be a cool combination of Shawn Hendrix and Unholy Gregory James, who they had renamed Isaiah. And I talked to him, and we hit it off pretty quickly. Talked to Book. I was like, "Hey, Book, I'm probably really out of shape for being a year and a half off. You should tag me
Right.
with Isaiah. That would probably be
You're in the
best."
frying pan at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say whatever I needed to say to Book in order to tag with Isaiah, and they thought it was a good idea. They debuted me, not re-debuted, but they returned in November of 2019 and had our first tag match, and it was very quick as well. I was in the ring for no more than 3.5 minutes, but it I could really feel something. We really bonded quickly. Like he's one of my best friends now,
Right.
and our chemistry worked so well that at one point I remember saying to myself, "It's not a matter of like if we're going to win these tag titles. It's a matter of when, and I know it's going to happen very soon." And we won them maybe in our like third or fourth match tagging together.
Wow, that's fast.
It was pretty quick. It was right as the pandemic started too.
Oh, well, it's too fast and it's to a screeching halt.
Yeah. And so once that happened, we did some COVID protocol shows where there was nobody in the live crowd, but we still filmed it. We all had to take our tests before being allowed into the building, and I I like to joke around with Izzy that I'm glad that we were able to team because we had the real big combination of like he was the technical guy and the powerhouse and he was the pretty fast guy and I was the other guy. That way we could be a good team.
You sound like a filler. It's like, yeah, Isaiah James is here, and you're just there. That's what it's.
Hey man, we need a second person for a tag team. He already
Exactly.
he already checked all the boxes. I was like, well, I'll just be here.
Oh my goodness! But
I,
you mentioned the pandemic, and I got to hear from your side. And the pandemic happened, life stopped, a lot of things go on the wayside. But for you to have that time to do these tapings, what was it like to just filming a show with just the commentary team, the camera guys, the referee, and like the limited amount of spots you had in the locker room?
Oh man, like I've wrestled in front of crowds that didn't care and didn't make any sound,
Right.
and that won't prepare you for wrestling in front of no crowd. Like that to
Right.
me was so bizarre. I couldn't feed off of their energy, couldn't I don't know, it was so weird. Like I was thankful to be able to still do what I could do, but to just in front of nobody, in front of essentially the locker room, just watching it, there was no difference between those televised matches and having a practice match in the back surrounded by the locker room. Like it was such
Oh.
a weird feeling because you had to go out there regardless of the fact that there's nobody in the crowd. You had to go out there and perform like there was a crowd. And as silly as anybody may feel already as a wrestler, like that just added, plus 20 silly points to that.
Mm.
It was difficult, and I'm obviously happy that the pandemic is no longer going on. But on a very small portion of that, I'm glad that I can go back to wrestling in front of people. Like that's not the
Yeah.
main thing, but that is a thing, and I'm glad is over.
How did you make lemons out of lemonade at that point when you were filming?
You just like how I said that it's a combination of theater acting and television acting. Kind of just had to focus mainly on the television acting.
Mm.
Um, that was gonna really be what conveys your story, your emotional ties to the story. Um, and everything was everybody was afraid, for one reason or another, of what was going on in the world. And one thing that really motivated a lot of us is like, if we can contribute something that helps people forget that's
Mm.
what's going on, like then we accomplished what we're trying to accomplish. It is basically, yeah, things suck right now. I'm trying not to suck. Like that was the biggest motivator to take whatever they gave and make it work so that people could be entertained and forget everything.
Is the pandemic started to loosen too? Were those same viewers that are watching those road tapings? Did they ever reach out to you and saying, "Oh my God, I saw you in this taping on this day"? Did that ever occur to you when the crowds were starting to fill in, and whether it's just one person or a series of people, they're like, "Shawn Hendrix, holy crap, you teamed up with Isaiah James." Well, that must have been cool seeing that taping when all it's happening then at that point is a live event.
So there were people who, as the crowd starting to come in more and more, first we started doing outdoor shows. Um, since there was, I guess, I can't remember quite the timeline, but nobody could be inside with bigger groups of however many people. So we did shows
Right.
out in the parking lot, and people were either sitting in their cars or sitting up to the guardrail. And, sometimes people would go out there and just, there'd be 20 cars just all laying in on their horn as we're making our
Mm.
entrance and stuff.
That's so cool, actually.
It was pretty cool. The shows were very hot in the sense that obviously we are in Houston and it was outside. Um, but we kind of slowly rolled into getting back to some sense of normalcy. And there were a number of people who were appreciative of the fact that I know you know, it's just wrestling, but that people who were just inside all day for months had some sense of escape. And there were people who definitely
Mm.
um, conveyed their appreciation for that, which made me feel like $1 million. Like, of course, I'd be happy to help anybody in any way I can, even if it's something as small as I get to wrestle.
You've had that lengthy run in reality, and New Texas is really in front of you now. When you look back in your journey at reality. I'll say this too. What's your favorite match throughout that time in Raw?
From Raw, I think my favorite match was from Summer of Champions. What year was it? 2021. It was a six-man tag match. It was me, Isaiah James, and Ryan Davidson versus BD Brawley, Rudy Garza, and Warren Johnson in a what I thought was a pretty quick, fast-paced match. No downtime. Crowd was into it the whole time. Um, it was a perfect cap to this rivalry that not only did Legion have with the Renegades of Wrestling, but also Ryan had with the Renegades of Wrestling. So that is probably my favorite match that I've had at Raw, without a doubt. Actually,
Yeah,
not probably, without a
I gotta
doubt. That's my
rewatch that. Yeah, I gotta rewatch that. I gotta have to watch that. I forgot there's a YouTube channel. I have to watch that. But anyways, so going into New Texas, and when was the writing of the wall that you want to try something new?
So we, if I'm going to be completely candid here, we were split apart at Row Legion. So Isaiah, myself, and Sid Mars. Uh, I don't want to like. I don't want to toot my own horn in any way, but like we were super over. I hate saying that, but like I was having the time of my life. The crowds were super loud for us, and we held those titles for over a year. Um,
Mm,
and they split us up in a segment that wasn't even aired in its entirety. It was a, hey, while we were gone, they had an argument on the stage and they broke up. Um, and I think that was an incredibly disrespectful way to to end something that I think really helped the company for a period of time in which, you know, the world had shut down.
mm,
But I was told I had three matches or so after that, and they were dark matches. Um, so they were the first matches of the show. They weren't taped, and I was told these are going to be a test for you. And like, I try not to have an ego, but I was 10 years in and wondering why. What is this? What are you trying to get out of this test? And so I did the matches, and I wasn't doing too hot, I guess, mentally. And the last show, after my match, I just left. Um, I missed the next show, which was the first time I had not gone to a reality wrestling show, whether or not I was wrestling. The first time
mm.
that I had not gone in years. And I was like, you know what? I think it's, I think it's time. I was already wrestling for PWF. I had done some stuff for the Texas Contender Series as a commentator. And I had talked with Kiefer about like, all right, we're going to move into you debuting as a wrestler.
Wow.
So I was like, you know what? If Roe wants me back, I'm all ears, but they're never going to see me as the person to put any kind of stock into. And whether that's
Mm.
just because I'm not that guy, because I'm too small, because I'm too old, I don't know the reason, but if they want me, they can reach out to me. I'm
And you
just
have
going
an open invitation for that too, because like you're open to go back. It's just the way that timing is such a very it's a very fickle thing when that happens, and especially in
yeah.
wrestling, and it's one of those things where like when the stars line up, Book's like, hey, all right, I'll put you back on. But at that point with New Texas, what makes it such a special home for you?
So for me, like I said, whenever I started training, there weren't really any other trainees. Um, I was in a class of my own, basically. But 2 years after I started, Kiefer Bartek started. And
Oh.
we hit it off really quick and became really good friends. He was in Legion. He was the like fourth person to join Legion, and he was in it for about a year. And I remember him telling me in 2018. Well, first, before he told me anything, he sent me a picture of the new Texas logo. And I was like, "What is this?" He goes, "I think I'm going to start a wrestling company." I was like, "Oh, that's really
Wow.
cool. Um, that's awesome, man. I hope that works out for you." I eventually stepped away from wrestling, and when I got back into wrestling, when I stepped away from wrestling, I should say that I didn't really talk to anybody in wrestling anymore.
Mm.
I kind of focused on my life, on working a real job, and et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't until I got back into wrestling that I kind of rekindled all of these friendships and relationships. And when I did get back into wrestling, Kiefer Bartek was no longer at Reality Wrestling. So the timeline there was just a little off, and we eventually um, got back into contact because we were both booked for a PWF show, and just kind of hit it back off from there. It's like our friendship never ended.
Mm.
And he started again. He's like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this Texas Contender Series." And I was like, "I have no idea what you mean by that. Like, I don't know what that is, but I'd be interested to help in any way." And I showed up to the first one. He was like, "You want to do commentary?" I was like, "Man, sure, why not?" And so I did. I did commentary, and that first Texas Contender Series show, the first few shows are actually really like they're magic in a way that I can't quite describe. Like, I was on commentary. I'm not a commentator. We had somebody doing the announcing who wasn't an announcer. We had referees who weren't refs. We were just all hands on deck trying to make this thing work.
Mm.
And what it has turned into since then is something truly special, in my opinion. So it was just kind of like Kiefer seeing me on commentary, being like, "Okay, are you ready to? We have this idea. Let's get you in the ring." And debuted helping Eighth Day out, and I guess from there it was just to the races.
Yeah. Cause it's kind of cool too, because being the first champion at Contenders Series, and how different is it to get the belt from Contenders Series to what we talked about before, working and getting the tag titles with, we'll say Izzy James at this point because it's 2025, but you know.
So, uh, okay. So the booking committee for the Texas Contender Series is Kiefer Bartek, Dan Miller, and myself.
Mm.
And I just want to get it out there right now.
Oh no.
I did not book myself to be the first champion. We we had set up a tournament to be the champ, who would be the first champion, and we were picking out
Mm.
names. And I suggested Rudy Garza to be the first champion because we wanted it to be a heel. That way, the face would have something to chase after, and it would be a big moment. So I was like, "How about Rudy?" Kiefer said he's doing something with the Lone Star title, and so it was Dan. Dan said, "Well, what about
Oh.
Shawn Hendrix?"
Oh no.
And the irony in that is the fact that the Texas Contender Series, especially at that time, was viewed as this is a student show. This is for our younger guys. Ugh. This is for our younger guys to get reps in front of a crowd so that they can develop their talents as a wrestler. So the first champion being somebody who had been wrestling for 10 years is kind of an ironic twist of like, no wonder you're the champion. That's not fair. Trying to get some kind of heat for that. Um,
Mm.
but I mean, I won the title, and I felt good about myself. That was the first singles title that I'd ever won. Was a student show belt 10 years
Mm.
in, and it wasn't until I lost the title to just Nick that it really hit me of like everything that we're doing to build this show up and to build this next generation of people. Like seeing Nick standing over my collapsed body and people throwing streamers at him, I was so happy in that moment. Like I don't cry during for wrestling stuff. I didn't like I won my first title, didn't cry. Won other titles, didn't cry. Won the Texas Contenders Series championship, didn't cry. Seeing Nick win it and how big of a story we were able to make that, and
Mm.
the fact that it involved most of the contenders roster with the battle royal ahead of time, like it was just all of this hard work that we had been putting into this show, and it clearly is working. And I was just so proud that, brought a tear to my eye. So it was fulfilling in such a different way than winning titles earlier in my career.
Because you sense how because you're imparting a lot because you've done your part and knowing how you're doing your grind as a wrestler to impart that even with the contender series title that you have, what was that like seeing the younger guys being pushed and knowing that you are one of the gold standards at at contender series and giving what you've learned so far to the younger guys? That must have been nice to know that I'm not done. I'm going to give all that I can to the younger guys who are still trying to figure out their identity as wrestlers within Contender Series.
This part of my career has been, without a doubt, the most fulfilling.
Okay.
Um, the fact that people come up to me and ask me my opinion, I'm like, why? What makes you think that I have a better opinion than anybody else? But they still come to me, and it's really humbling. Um, just it's definitely the most fulfilling aspect of my entire career is being able to help these people who want to reach a higher level, and all of these younger people have pushed me to
That's good.
being, yeah, they've definitely pushed me to performing at a higher level than I've ever performed at, because in my head, if they're looking up to me in any kind of way, then I have to be able to perform at a level that they would want to look up to.
Right.
I don't want to be one of these guys who, it's like, all right, well, here's the Shawn Hendrix match, and it's 7 minutes of me slowly prodding around the ring, and they're like, oh man, he should really hang it up. I don't want to be one of those guys, and I never want to be one of those guys. So I've put in more work into this part of my career than any other part, because these kids, so to speak, they push me, and I'm trying to keep up with them.
Right. I think one of the things that I noticed throughout this time is storytelling is such an important aspect in wrestling. We talked about this in bits and pieces. Long-term storytelling is kind of an interesting thing, and working with Oday, working with Timor, working with Guardian, and we'll throw in Vic too, and having that time working with the Eighth Day. And Dan mentioned about wrestling can be anything, and to have longer form storytelling, which will lead to the I Repent match down the line. What was like the initial foundation of you working with the Eighth Day? Because they did start in contenders as well too.
So it initially started um, as they were coming out for contenders, and I was on commentary. I don't know if I was trying to just be more heelish on commentary, but I would totally get into the like, oh, praise the Eighth Day and make fun of Haley Danielle, who was my co-commentator, for not
Mm.
believing, And I would just get into it every segment they came in. And one day after the show, because of the fact that I've had a 10-year, um, basically evil character with Legion and just dark, it was kind of just like wouldn't it be funny if you joined the eighth day? And it's like, you know what? That would be pretty funny. Um, and we talked to Kiefer about it, and we really wanted to push Oday and Timur as a tag team, and I was in a fairly successful tag team. I think I understand tag team wrestling to a pretty high degree, and so it was
Right.
kind of like a mentorship where not only could I be established or and introduced to the new Texas and Contender Series crowd as a performer, but behind the scenes, I could assist them with their characters, with wrestling, with tag team psychology. It was sort of a way to legitimize them on and off screen as a tag team.
The gears were starting to turn, and there were moments too of how this like saga is ongoing. You being excommunicated to the eighth day, Vic leaving the eighth day in terms of how the story is going. How are those moments really drive a story like that with the eighth day and what you're doing things on that side of that saga?
So, in the same sense of within a wrestling match, you need to let things breathe.
Mhm.
When it comes to long term storytelling, I would say it's the same thing. You can't have something huge happen every single week or every other week or every show. You have to plant seeds. One show, you know, I'll go to raise Oday's hand and he snatches it away. And that's the extent of the split, I guess, is just that. Or other small details where I look disappointed for one show. It's that way an accumulation of emotions throughout multiple months, and in this case years, to where you have time to process these emotions and not only process them, but anticipate with excitement or anxiety what's going to happen next. And we were very fortunate that, you know, Timor and Roger and Guardian are all great, but the two driving forces behind this story of me and Ode,
Mhm.
um, we, to again speak highly of myself, but specifically speak highly of Ode, we understood the emotional and the subtle acting of trying to push a narrative.
Right.
Um, on top of the grand, wild gestures of smashing me with a chair 37 times, there's also the
Right.
small, close up, intimate moments that it's hard to teach, especially in wrestling training. It's something that you'd be more akin to learn in some kind of improvisational class or a theater. But Ode is incredibly talented when it comes
Mhm.
to the character aspect in ways that, it blows my mind. Um, out of out of character, me speaking, Ode is one of the best that I've ever met, especially considering he's only been in the business for a handful of years. The longer he's going to be in it, and once he tightens some things up, he's going to be an all timer, no doubt.
Right.
And his capabilities of carrying the story, along with, if not better, than somebody such as myself who had been in it for over 12 years, is a testament to how much he understands the aspect of storytelling.
Leading up to the I Repent match, and the segments started to becoming a bit more impactful. And leading up to that match, how has the intensity of that story suddenly snowballed into something big that it will eventually lead to the I Repent match at the showcase?
So that was. that was a challenge, um, of having to keep up the intensity with every interaction between Oday and myself. Of not just does it have to be intense like we want to end each other, but each time has to be even more and more intense. Our first altercation with me returning was just a pull apart fight. There we go.
Mhm.
A pull apart fight that the whole locker room had to come and separate us. After that, we had a match that started before the bell rang. We were just throwing fists. And
Wow, that's cool, actually.
and then after that, we did the Haram match, which was a lumberjack match where all the lumberjacks were armed with leather belts, which that sucked really hard, but we knew that we had to up the stakes and the intensity. Um, I failed to mention that before the Haram match, I did singles matches with Guardian and Timor. And the small mini story in between the overarching story was that they kidnapped my fiance. So
Oh.
we filmed that segment. My fiance tied up, bag over their head. And so now I have to come at this in a realistic way of how would I actually act if somebody kidnapped the person that I love? How do I fight them, regardless if they're
Right.
twice my size? And so everything just had to keep ramping up until eventually the I Repent match, no holds barred, no disqualification. The only way to win is to make the person suffer so much that they say, okay, I repent.
Right.
And like it just starting off hot is nice, but you have to remember that there is somewhere that you have to build up to. So when you start off hot, you got to build up to something and finish off white hot. And whether we did that or not at Indie Showcase is one thing. Um, some people say yes, some people say no, but it is something that both of us really tried was to keep the intensity up, not only throughout the matches, but throughout the whole saga.
The match itself happened, and the build up and lead up has finally come to that match at the Indie Showcase. To have this resolution, what did it feel like to at least loosen the weight that the match is going to really fulfill by the end of that entire showcase? What was that like seeing that resolution finally come to life when the match ended?
So we knew that going into that, either, or the audience knew that either I was going to retire or that Eighth Day was going to split up from New Texas. And like I said, that we were building up the intensity. And so once the match was actually over, it was almost like there was a weight lifted off my chest of like, okay,
Okay.
I, from here on out, I'm not going to be in a blood feud. I'm not going to be super angry with the next person that I'm wrestling. I'm not having to have the intensity that one would if their fiance was kidnapped. I'm
Right.
not having to have the intensity one would if somebody that they're wrestling tried to kill them. So it was almost like I can go back to being a regular happy person. Um,
It's like I'm done. It's over. Clean slate. That's
exactly. And I told Oday a couple of times, I was like, I'm just gonna say I repent and I'm gonna retire, and then you have to keep going. Like,
it's like that's it. Call it. Call it. Call it. That's
yeah,
what it is.
we opened the match up with a strike exchange with our belts,
Mhm.
and after those first like three, in my head, I was like, I'm gonna say I repent. This sucks. I'm not doing this anymore. But went through the match and it was fine, and now it's a weight lifted of this intense style of storytelling is over, which on one hand is it's sad because it's some of the best art that I've ever put out. On the other
Okay.
hand, having extraneous and deep art is taxing on not only the body but also the mind, and
Mhm.
now I can relax in a sense.
And
So,
you sense like there is I would well let's do definite end because there is a definite end in the story that you're doing, and of course there's some time to breathe and to really just relax for this time since the Contender Series. This year's a thing, and what are some of the things that you're looking forward to during this year?
oh man, I just feel like the Contender Series as a whole is going to grow exponentially, um, through the hard work of behind the scenes and in front of the camera.
Right.
And I'm excited to see that. And whatever role I may play in front of the camera is kind of here nor there, but I'm excited to be a part of it in the behind the scenes that I have. Um, I am truly excited to see where the individuals of the eighth day go now that they are no longer tied to that anchor of the eighth day. Not that it was an anchor holding them down, but it was something that was holding them together, and they had a definitive um, path. But now they have to branch out on their own, and I'm excited to see them with their own creativity.
That's good, especially with how the Atheist doing and how they're doing their own thing and seeing how the stories are being built up and seeing well it's a definite break to know that they have their paths set straight to what they need to do in their careers. So it's nice to see that match and just learning what happened leading up to it and seeing that everyone has their journey in life as wrestlers, and seeing that makes them really reaffirm, okay, what can I do that will make myself as a wrestler better, even though the eighth day has that foundation in what they're doing things in the wrestling ring.
Hmm. It's it's exciting knowing that for me, I mean, I'm a little selfish here. I'm happy to know that I was at least a part of their story, all of
Yeah.
these individuals. And I'm excited to see, and I hope that they go on to do much bigger and better things than I could have ever dreamed of, because I think that they all have it in them, and I hope that I helped them in some way.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, this will be the last question for the episode. And thanks, Shawn Hendrix, for having you on. It's been a treat to know like you've done so much time at Row that the foundations laid by everyone there, it propelled you forward, knowing that when you landed at New Texas that there's so many people that are going to look up to you, and knowing that they have someone to confide on how they do things in the wrestling business, that someone who's done the time to be training and grinding and working from every time that you're on, that there's someone there to look up to now that they have someone who has the experience to say, hey, can I have a question? You know, that type of thing.
It's I love each one of these guys at Texas Contender Series, and I was at a show last Saturday. It wasn't Contender Series, but the promoter mentioned me in front of everybody, and he said, "Give it up for Shawn Hendrix. If you've ever learned something from him, give it up for Shawn Hendrix." And the
That's
fact that the
good.
whole locker room was applauding, like, I was like, "Guys, calm down. Like, I don't think you guys understand. I'm just, I'm not who you think I am. I might have imposter syndrome or something, but I want nothing more than to help each one of these guys out. All of the eighth day, the dream team, Dustin, Just Vibin, like I would do so much for all of these guys, and I want nothing more than to see them go so far beyond anything that I ever achieved. Like, that is, if they do that, then my wrestling career was worth it.
So I'll end our conversation with this, and this is a brand new question because I tend to do advice to your younger self, but I'll say this in a different angle. What would it be like hanging out with a younger version of you for a day?
Oh, man. It would probably be very annoying. How young are we talking?
Okay.
Like,
Adolescence.
adolescence? Oh,
Yep.
actually, that'd be pretty chill.
Okay.
It wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was just mad and bitter.
Okay. Fair enough.
Adolescence? No, I was chill. I was cool. We were playing video games. We were watching wrestling. It was, if I was able to tell him, hey, this is everything, you're not going to accomplish everything that you want, but here's what you do accomplish in wrestling, his mind would be blown. So,
Oh, that must have been that. He would have been like, "You wrestled where? And
yeah.
you worked with Booker, and now you're on the student series." That must have been like, "Wait a second. Okay, I can see where you're going."
Yeah, he would know that all of his goals would eventually be attained. It would just be very hard and it would take a while, but he would accomplish everything that he truly wanted to accomplish in wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. And this was fun. I have
Yeah,
nothing left to give. You have the floor. Where can we find you? And if you have anything upcoming on your side of the woods?
you can find me, I guess, on Instagram, Hendrix Havoc, Facebook, Shawn Hendrix. I refuse to go back onto X because it's a cesspool. And what do I have upcoming? September 20th, I'm going to be at PWF. I'm their first ever Grand Slam champion. So you got to hear what I have to say. And basically every other Thursday, I'll be on the Texas Contenders Series. So
there you go. So for those who are watching or listening, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on Apple Podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. We got another episode coming up. So I will see you guys on the next one.